first time in a long time I've read the minutes before the meeting.
And you weren't even going to be here to say that you approved.
I'm not voting because I wasn't here.
There's a letter for
What do you have?
Muddles. Such a mercy.
A couple with a sore throat and a headache.
I had that. Like a week ago.
Fine when I went to bed.
Hey, it is 7 o'clock. I'm going to open the public meeting. That's plenty loud. Our first hearing will be Morose Avenue, Larry Gagnon.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Attorney Melissa Robbins. I'm from the law firm of DeShane and Farrell. I'm here tonight representing Larry Gagnon in the continuance of this variance request for Morose Avenue. At the last board meeting, we went extensively through the grounds for the variance for this matter. And the board had requested that we have a site visit, which I know the board has attended at this point. And it also asked us to look at some of the drainage issues on the site. In your packets tonight, you have a letter from Ted Doucette, who has gone out and reviewed the site as to those drainage issues. And with some of the things we had discussed at the last meeting, possibly putting gutters or drainage on the site, he felt as though this site could be properly addressed for all stormwater. And I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want to read the letter into record
I
first.
have it. I will read it into record.
Okay.
From Doucette Engineering, December 4th, 2018. Dear board members, regarding 255930 Morose Ave, this letter is submitted to summarize my review of the property on Morose Ave, Chelmsford, Assessor's ID 255930, and to provide my professional opinion on the development of this property in relation to the abutting properties. On November 7th, 2018, I visited the property, walked the area to assess the concerns from neighbors regarding the possibility of a single-family home being constructed on this lot. Their concerns stated to me that they are worried the construction of a new home on this lot could cause flooding in their basements or under their property. The existing condition is a lot moderately wooded, narrow in portion, approximately 44 feet, that slopes away from Morose Avenue. The lot is where the home is proposed is approximately 150 feet by 200 feet that slopes slightly from the south to the north toward Edgelon Avenue. After reviewing the Board of Appeals plan by Aho Survey dated 12/26/2017 and walking the site, there is sufficient room on the property to ensure the neighboring properties are not adversely affected by a new home being constructed. The lot is sufficiently large enough to control runoff from impervious surfaces, including the roof and the driveway. The runoff from the roof can be controlled by gutters, which would discharge into roof drains below grade, then to dry wells or other subsurface infiltration. The driveway can be constructed with a cross slope away from the neighboring property to infiltrate runoff into the ground naturally. This could be done using a swale to direct water away from the driveway. That would possibly flow towards the homes on Edgelon Avenue. There I go here. That can be controlled by grading the land to either slope away from that direction, or a small berm could be used to divert the water from the lot line. There is sufficient area for both scenarios. In summary, based on my review of the property, my professional opinion is that a home can be constructed on lot 255930 Morose Ave without adversely affecting the abutting lots on Morose Avenue and Edgelon Avenue. Respectfully, Ted P. Doucette, Engineer.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I should put that up before the meeting.
No problem.
But I see that Colleen's got it up on the board now anyway. I think I had mentioned at the last meeting as well that if the board found that they wanted to have this reviewed by engineering once we file for the building permit, my client would be agreeable to that and would amend their application to state so. And I think if the board's inclined to allow such a variance, this letter could actually be part of the record. And we would agree to comply with the conditions of this letter and some of the alternatives that they've put in place for a single-family home on this lot. And we would have the plan reviewed by town engineer prior to a building permit being issued for this site. Also, I think the last meeting we had in a butter speak about a driveway being over a portion of our property. And I know they're here this evening and have counsel, and I wanted to make sure the board knew that we would offer to grant an easement to that abutter to keep whatever portion of the driveway was on our property on this portion of the property, so it would not affect their access whatsoever. We did have our engineer look at that issue, and there's no problem with keeping their portion of their driveway. It's very minimal, actually, and putting our access on there as well. There's plenty of space.
I did try to find that nail point and did not succeed. But
Right. So Just so you know, that's not an issue, and we will, I know that's not a purview of this board, but we will agree to work along with the abutter to grant him an easement for that access. And if the board has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think everybody had a chance to walk the site. You ladies excluded. I felt it was suitable to fit a home. I talked with the abutter, and I'm sure that we're going to hear from him or his attorney, so we can come up with any questions we have. At this point, I do not have any. Charlie, any stories?
I wasn't here that Saturday. I didn't go.
Okay.
I didn't look at it.
You haven't seen the site?
No.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to ask for anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor or against this proposal to approach the podium. State your name and address, please, and your concerns.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Attorney Thomas Doyle. My office address is 5 Fletcher Street, Unit 2A, right here in Chelmsford. I represent Mr. Wayne Sullivan of 11 Morose Avenue and adjacent abutter to the parcel of land in question. The applicant is here this evening requesting a variance for insufficient lot area and frontage. The parcel of land owned by the applicant is zoned RA. RA zoning requires 60,000 square feet and 150 square feet of frontage. The variance application states the applicable zoning article and subsection as 195-9 and 195-10. 195-9 states that the Zoning Board of Appeals may issue a special permit for reduction in required lot size if, according to 195-9B2, adjacent properties will not be adversely affected. Mr. Sullivan purchased his property at 11 Morose Avenue more than 5 years ago, adjacent to an unbuildable, non-conforming parcel of land. Granting this variance will adversely affect Mr. Sullivan's property and his family's quality of life at 11 Morose Avenue forever. Pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 10, in order for this board to grant a variance, it must make 3 specific findings. Number 1, nonconformance must be owing to circumstances relating to the soil conditions, shape, or topography of such land or structures, and especially affecting such land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it is located. Number 2, literal enforcement would involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise. Number 3, no substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or purpose of the ordinance or bylaw. This board could find in its discretion, if the board makes the 3 aforementioned specific findings, that the applicant has demonstrated a hardship for a variance for insufficient frontage. However, this board cannot grant a variance for insufficient lot area because insufficient lot area is not considered or mentioned as a hardship as defined in Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 10. This board has considered past applications for variances based on insufficient lot area and has denied applications in the past at 54 Parker Road, 16 Stage Road, and 26 Glen Ave. Town Council drafted a memorandum to this board dated January 31st, 2018 regarding variances for insufficient lot size at 54 Parker Road and 16 Stage Road. In that memorandum, the council states, the harm asserted by, quote, the harm asserted by the applicant must be directly related to the issues of unusual shape, topography, and/or soil conditions. Thus, the board must be able to find that the lack of requisite lot area is directly related to the unique lot shape, topography, and/or soil conditions. This is a factual determination to be made by the board. Town Council cites Sargonis versus Board of Appeals of Wareham, a 1993 Supreme Judicial Court case. In its decision, the court writes, quote, unless the circumstances relating to the soil conditions of the land, shape of the land, or topography of the land cause the hardship, no variance may be granted lawfully. This was a non-conforming, unbuildable parcel of land segregated from another non-conforming parcel of land due to a tax taking. Its nonconformity is not due to any special characteristics of the land. Its nonconformity is due to how the neighborhood was subdivided years ago. As a result, no variance may be granted lawfully as per the Sargonis decision. Town council goes on to state in his memorandum, I will note, however, that I was not able to find a single appellate or trial court case providing an example of a hardship relating to lot area that was directly related to unique lot shape, topography, and/or soil conditions. This board has a legal and ethical duty to follow the law and be consistent with its prior decisions denying variances based on insufficient lot size. Mr. Gagnon's counsel, in a letter to this board dated September 6, 2018, states that, quote, "A literal enforcement of the bylaw would create a financial hardship to the applicant as it would render the site unbuildable. Denying this variance will not create a financial hardship. On December 1st, 2017, Mr. Gagnon purchased this parcel of land from the town of Chelmsford for $51,000, well aware that it was an unbuildable, non-conforming parcel of land. Mr. Gagnon assumed a financial risk when he purchased this lot for cheap money knowing it was unbuildable, and now looks to cash in by requesting a variance to build a house. This is not the same circumstance as Mr. Gagnon owning this land for years and years and it becoming non-conforming due to the town changing zoning requirements. Granting this variance will substantially derogate from the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaws in direct contradiction of Chapter 40, Section 10. For the reasons stated, I hereby respectfully request on behalf of Mr. Sullivan that this board deny the application for variance and not allow Mr. Sullivan's property and quality of life be adversely affected by the development of this parcel of land. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I have a petition signed by 11 neighbors, including abutters, that I'd like to submit to the board, as well as a copy of the Sargonis decision and a copy of the town council's
Thank you. Chair wants it?
What are our numbers?
Thank you, ladies and
for,
gentlemen.
the lot size itself? What is the lot size?
So this is zoned RA, which is 60,000. But as Melissa can speak to, the reason behind that zoning, which is very unusual for Chelmsford.
And Colleen, I don't know if you have the other slides that I gave during the application, but the board can see it here in the zoning map. This is the lot here that's highlighted in blue. All of these lots, basically all of them, with the exception of this lot to the side of it, are all zoned RA, and none of them are 60,000 square feet. And the reason behind that is because after most of this is Lamplighter right here on the other side of Route 3, and this is the Burroughs Avenue area with Edgelawn here, for those of you who can't see the street names from there. This is actually a water resource area now in the town of Chelmsford. And when you make something a water resource area, watershed area in a municipality, you have to rezone the area around it, the most stringent zoning in the town, and that's to protect the land that surrounds it. So after this was put in place, all of this was rezoned as RA, even though, as you can see, none of the lots in the area actually comply with any of the RA zoning.
Are they the 40,000 or any of those, the 40,000 feet?
You can click through them, but I think the only lot that may be 40,000 square feet is this lot, but the zoning requirement in RA is 60,000.
Yeah, just the
But I think
40
the
is
only
kind
one
of a
I-
benchmark.
Colleen, I think can you click on this guy? Yeah, I think that's the only one that even comes close. And remember, this, our
That's a
lot's-
rear lot.
Yeah, so
Right.
that lot's 1.24 acres, so don't make me do math on my feet, but that's the closest one there that's to 60,000 square feet. Our lot, just for comparison, is 46,174. Although, just like this other lot, I'm sure, you can't count this little piece of area because of the math
The
diagram.
50
You have to
foot.
subtract this, right, because this is only like 48.
It does
feet
say
across there.
1.03
Right, so you can't
acres.
count all that area right up to the access, which would be true almost for the other lot across the street as well, which rendered most of them pre-existing non-conforming.
And
But they were all pre-existing prior to the change to an RA zoning.
They all pre-existed RA zoning. They were all made RA when the well shed was put in place. So every single lot is pre-existing non-conforming now.
And just to be clear, Melissa, the reason the RA zoning was required was because it's the most restrictive zoning.
That's correct.
Around a wellhead.
Right.
This is Mr. Sullivan, .36.
Right, and Mr. Sullivan's lot was actually, these lots were combined with Mr. Sullivan's lot and my client's lot. They were both owned by Harry and Rita Spears. And then it was following the death of Harry, everything went to Rita. And then following the death of Rita, they continued paying the taxes on that one lot, but failed to pay the taxes for that assessed lot in the rear. So even though at that point they'd already merged for zoning purposes, for assessment purposes, they were two separate parcels. So this lot got taken for non-payment of taxes, and this lot continued to get paid the state taxes.
And was it assessed as a buildable lot?
It was all one lot. For zoning purposes, at that point, it was all one lot.
But the assessment,
Had it for two separate lots.
And
both buildable?
Right, the lot he purchased was
No.
non-buildable.
It was non-buildable, and that was the letter that you had from Mr. Dupel. It said that if you were going to build on that lot, you'd need this very variance. That was what was circulated during the purchase of this property.
So he knew going in that it was already,
He knew that it was an undersized lot, and in order to construct anything on it, he was going to require variance. And I think Mr. Dupel's letter is actually in your packet. It said that in order to construct anything on this lot, you need a variance for the lot size, frontage, and width.
Yeah.
And Melissa, can you talk just to the reason it was disposed of by the town?
It was it was done as part of their tax title sale.
And
So they disposed of it because it was surplus property in the town of Chelmsford.
and they sold it as knowing it needed the variance.
That's correct. Yeah, Mr. Dupel's letter was actually part of the sales package. It wasn't done as part of this application.
So I have one from Mr. Shanahan. Okay, Sean, you concur with Mark's assessment?
Yes.
I found the other letter, I've got both.
Would be through the variance process.
Mr. Chair, I think regardless, and I don't want to rehash what I already did at the first meeting, but regardless of the way that the lot was created, we did not create this hardship. We bought a lot with this hardship. Our duty is to prove that the lot has a hardship owing to the soil shape and topography that is not a substantial detriment to the neighborhood and that is conformance with your zoning bylaws. I think it's pretty clear that this lot has a hardship owing to the soil shape and topography. It's a unique shape. It has a long driveway. We cannot count that access area. Also, as a result of the town rezoning, we were deemed undersized. And therefore, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
I'm curious what it was rezoned from. Was it RB or?
I think it was RC, but I'm not sure.
I'd have to go back through
Yes.
the actual bylaw.
but the
Might be
rezoning was
RB.
done well before he purchased the lot.
Yes, it was
So-
already RA when he purchased
Right,
it.
so it
Yes.
didn't affect him because he already knew coming in.
Oh, absolutely. When he bought the property, he knew that he was going to have to get a variance. But he thought it was worth the risk because he thought the property was unique enough and that it had a hardship owing to the soil shape and topography. And again, I would like to just look at the substantial detriment again. This lot complies with all setback requirements in the RA zoning district. So this lot is no closer than any other house in this zoning district. And actually, it's further away than most of the lots in that area. To the extent there'll be a single-family home on this lot, it'll be further placed away than any other lot in this area. And I think I had gone through that during my first hearing process. So there's really no detriment in accordance with your zoning to putting that house. You can see that there is the offset line for zoning is right here. So there's plenty of area in order to put this house right in the center and comply with all the dimensional setbacks. And there's plenty of safe and adequate access coming off of this driveway. And if you look at the lot across the street, they're even more narrow and they can access their house safely and adequately. So I don't think it's a question that this has any substantial detriment to the neighborhood or putting a single house there. There's no safety issue whatsoever.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the audience? Someone like to speak?
That's a question.
Yeah, ask all the questions you'd like.
The lawyer for Mr. Sullivan, I believe? You made comment that your individual is going to substantially detrimental change to quality of life.
Yes.
How is that?
Right out his back door, there's gonna be another house, and wasn't one there before. When he bought the property, it was a non-buildable, non-conforming lot, and now there's gonna be a house there. It's gonna change his quality of life for his family forever.
How does, I mean, my question is.
Privacy.
Okay, so you're saying his privacy will be impinged upon by the building of this?
Yeah, when he bought his
house.
property 5 years ago, there was nothing there, and this was a non-buildable, non-conforming lot.
Okay.
And through this variance, it's gonna change how he lives and how his family lives forever.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we know what this spacing is going to be from Mr. Sullivan's rear of his house to
It's right here.
the
It's right on the
closest?
plan. It's 60 feet there and 64 feet there.
So it's 124 right. But do we know, like, what's the distance between Mr. Sullivan's house and this neighbor's house right here?
I can do a measurement.
And what's the distance?
Can you look at the screen? Is it this one here?
Yes, sorry, yeah. So it's 124 feet.
Sixty-four feet.
And how much to his house, to the easement, to the border? You know what I mean? Is that,
What's the next one you want?
right here, from here to here?
64 and 38.
102.
So, yeah,
And these-
102 from his neighbor, and the other one would be 124. Okay.
If I can, I mean, we have room, if the board were concerned about spacing to structures, you can see that we have space to move. This is a proposed footprint, but if the board would like to shift this building over some to be further away from any of the surrounding houses, even though we're 125 feet away from any of the existing structure, we can move all the way to these offset lines.
And this is the garage, correct?
That's correct.
Do you plan on having living quarters above the garage? I can't, is that a living or just a great room or?
Right. And that's just the rendering too, that's not the actual structure to be built.
Somebody waiting on deck.
Yep. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Ma'am?
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt.
Yep, I understand.
So I live at 29 Edgelon Ave, and I did not get a chance to sign that, so it would really be 12 that at least signed the petition. I think to put a house this size in a neighborhood where the houses are, the foundations are all 20 by 40. I mean, if you looked at that neighborhood when you did the walk, putting a house this size in that neighborhood is just, I think it's outrageous. And, you know, I understand town wants tax money and wants to get more money, but I think to just allow variances, the lot was unbuildable when he bought it, so that was his own risk. I don't think we should just allow someone to come in, buy it, and say, okay, we'll make an exception for you. I mean, that doesn't seem fair. And I'm just going on record as saying I'm opposed to it.
Thank you. Or anyone else this evening that'd like to speak? Your name and address, please.
I'm Mary Harvey, and I live at 11 Edgelon, and I agree with this woman wholeheartedly, and I am totally against this variance. And I just think if he bought the lot, and I feel bad for him that he put all that money into it, but the point is that he bought it knowing that it was a lot that was unbuildable by the laws that were presented prior, and just to change everything to accommodate someone else, I just don't think it's right. And I just wanted to get up there and just voice what I feel about that.
Thank you.
Okay?
Would anyone else like to speak this evening? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the hearing, public hearing?
Second, with Nancy, all in favor? Aye. Unanimous? Does anyone have any thoughts?
I got a lot.
Well, then we'll start with you.
Is there any way,
You can't talk to them.
So
Oh.
the
You can't
public
talk to
hearing's
them anymore.
closed.
sorry.
Talk to us.
We can reopen it if it's something you.
I just think that Mr. Sullivan's lawyer brought a lot of data to the table that I know some of it was new to me, and I like to research and verify information.
I think he was fairly on point as to his arguments. The Board of Appeals' duty is to decide whether where the appeal is justified. So
Right.
he has a point, but we are able to decide for ourselves whether
Which-
this
which-
is indeed going to be detrimental, whether there is a hardship for the financial or otherwise for the lot, and whether the topography and shape of it creates the right to have a variance. So those are the three burdens we have.
And just for your question, the variance application is the avenue to allow for exceptions that they're talking about when needed, and they need to be related to exactly what Brian said, the lot shape, the topography. There's a legal definition for it.
Okay.
Can someone explain the shape, size, or topography hardship for this particular lot? I don't see yeah, I don't see the hardship for it's not a triangular skinny lot.
The drive-in creates an odd-shaped lot, not necessarily, one of the things that happens here is this is 43 feet wide. Were it 50, you could add this additional area into this, but were that 50, we still would not have
Yeah,
the
still not.
60,000. So it doesn't contain the lot. The
Brian,
other lots,
It's also, if it was 50 feet, it would be a rear lot.
so
by
this,
right.
this had gotten
By
to
right.
50. That would still be a variance if we decided
No,
to look at it.
a
as a-
rear lot with 50 feet would be.
If they were to apply as a rear lot, then the question would be, can we approve that at 43 feet rather than 50?
That's
and
where the
create a rear
variance
lot?
is required.
But it'd still be a variance, it wouldn't go to a special permit.
No, but if it were 50 feet, it would be through the planning board as a rear lot that is allowable.
20%?
Say that again?
For a variance, it has to be 20%?
Where did the 20%
I'm
come?
wondering, as a rear lot, does it need a variance or a special permit? So at 50, it is 7.2 feet short of being 50, and 20% of 43.8 feet would be 8.7,
You're doing math.
8.76.
You're asking me math.
I'm doing math, yeah. So would that be an avenue to get around the variance issue? I struggle with the variance.
Well, the variance is appropriate. Do
Can't make it to,
you want to speak to this,
can't
Sean?
make it a real lot, I'm gonna fix it.
Brian, I believe a rear lot's 80,000 square feet.
So there's another
There was
problem
no
with the.
way it would
right,
make
right,
it.
okay.
Rear lot.
What was the limitation for the rear
It's
lot?
80,000.
80,000.
So that doesn't really grant them any relief. Were they to call it a rear lot and had the 80,000, we could have
Then you
done
would
a
be looking
special
for the lot
permit
size.
rather than a variance. I mean, I don't think the hardship for the variance is, the question is, what's the hardship in my mind, if it's,
I'm not seeing it personally.
I mean, he came in knowing it wasn't,
yeah, I understand. But he wasn't surprised by that, or it wasn't something that had been around. It was not a buildable lot when he purchased it, so there's no,
right.
you know.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Was the lot advertised at the sale through the town as a variance may be able to be obtained to be a buildable lot?
I believe not, but I think we'd have to open the public hearing.
Ask Melissa.
No, it's part, just a procedural, point of procedure, I didn't get that, this is the Cal's letter that was included in the sale.
Oh, it's in there, great.
That would just be a point that I would bring up if it was advertised, that you may be able to obtain a variance or a special permit.
That, I believe that was part of it. And the town chose not to go forward with getting it, to make it, and then it would have been a more expensive lot.
That's what, why didn't the town just get the, I
Town
guess,
takes a back seat on that stuff. Let the applicant pay the prices to ask for the variance.
I won't speak for anyone else, but the wordage for, even if the town said you may, that's not it's not a suggestion that you will, it's a possibility, which it's possible, but I don't think that will alter my thought process as to if it is a hardship or not, whether or not the town announced or advertised it as something that you may be able to get around or not.
Right, it would have to be you can,
Yeah.
it was a buildable lot. I think it would have been advertised as a non-buildable lot, and if we need to open the public hearing, I will.
Well, I think they've already acknowledged that he knew it was a non-buildable
Right,
lot in
so-
the discussion.
We'll just leave it closed then. Any other thoughts?
No, I'm all set. I've seen everything, heard everything.
I'd like to ask for a motion to approve, or, what was Paul saying? Or was it better to?
Always go in the positive,
We ask for a motion to approve.
and then it can
We-
fail.
And then we vote on the approval. Someone like to make a motion?
No.
Well, just to get it going, I will make a motion that we approve the lot at Morose Ave.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second motion by Jackie. All in favor? All opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Probably the right move, I think. Our next hearing is a continuation, 101 Main Street, Brian and Lucy Sullivan, seeking a variance under 195-9 conformity to create a new buildable lot from an existing lot and any other relief that may be deemed necessary.
You knew that?
No. Not nothing,
Okay.
but it's interesting. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name's Philip Eliopoulos. I'm an attorney here in Chelmsford at 9 North Road. On behalf of Brian and Lacey O'Sullivan, seeking a variance for lot area. I know there's a couple of letters that have been submitted to the board since our October hearing. We continued November, so I don't know if you want to maybe read those into the record. Might shorten some of what I have to say tonight.
The three letters were never read in because we
Okay.
continued, so you can go ahead.
I'll read them in at this time.
Thank you, Brian.
Someone wrote me a novel, thank you.
Take a drink.
This is dated October 25th, 2018, Chelmsford Zoning Board of Appeals, regarding a variance application from Brian and Lacey O'Sullivan. To whom it may concern, we are writing you to show our support for the variance application at 101 Main Street by Brian and Lacey O'Sullivan. A couple of months ago, Brian O'Sullivan presented us their basic plan of what they intend to build on the lot on Burton Lane. We are residents that live at 7 Burton Lane, and we are in complete support of this application with no objections. Burton Lane and Main Street as a neighborhood of single-family residences. It would be nice to have young kids growing up in the street. It is a great neighborhood for a young family to live. Michael Walsh and Jennifer Walsh of 7 Burton Lane. I have a letter from Thomas Gonzalez, 5 Burton Lane, Chelmsford, to the Zoning Board of Appeals. A variance application for Brian and Lacey O'Sullivan. Dear Chelmsford Zoning Board of Appeals, I am writing you to show my support of the variance application of 101 Main Street by Lacey and Brian O'Sullivan. Brian O'Sullivan presented me with a basic plan of what they intend to do with the lot should their application be approved. After review of the plan, I offer my complete support of the application with no objections. Sincerely, Thomas Gonzalez. This letter is from Brian O'Sullivan, 9548 Cal Diaz Way, apartment 1115, Carolina, Puerto Rico, October 29th, 2018, to the Chelmsford Zoning Board of Appeals. Reason the variance application for 101 Main Street. Dear Chelmsford Zoning Board of Appeals, my wife Lacey and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for hearing our application at the October ZBA hearing. We also appreciate your testimony, hearing testimony from a number of abutters we asked to take the podium and speak on our behalf in support of the project. I was able to fly up from Puerto Rico and be present at the October hearing, but I did not take the opportunity to speak. I felt that our attorney, Philip Iliopoulos, accurately conveyed our story and what our intentions are. Once again, I am traveling from Puerto Rico to attend the ZBA hearing on November 1st. Given the opportunity, I would like to speak, but I respect that the board's time may preclude me from doing so. For this reason, I respectfully submit this letter in lieu of testimony. I request be entered into the record and read at the hearing on November 1st. I know Mr. Iliopoulos covered this in his presentation, but with the passing of time, my concern is that the important information could be forgotten. From the start, our goal was to include the residents of Burton Lane in this project every step of the way and respect and address any concerns they may have. We feel we have done that and received positive feedback from all 7 property owners on Burton Lane and the unanimous support to build a house on the overgrown wooded area on the lot of 101 Main Street. To quickly recap the October testimony of Ken Lavelle of 2 Burton Lane, he explains that his wife Sue and he would prefer to look across the street at a house fitting the character of the street rather than a dark, overgrown lot. In their letter, Karen and Dermot Quinn of 4 Burton Lane showed the same support. In her testimony, Tammy Arena of 3 Burton Lane recounts the time the town told her that her house could not be numbered 1 Burton Lane due to the large amount of frontage on the property of 101 Main Street that faces Burton Lane. It appears that even back then, the town of Chelmsford was already considering the possibility of 101 Main Street having another house on the lot to become 1 Burton Lane. I think it is clear that all the abutters believe our new home would not be detrimental to the neighborhood. Lacey and I would also like to take this opportunity to explain how the project really began to take shape. It all started on September 19th, 2017, which began a 1-year separation due to my job. Lacey and our daughter Shay stayed with Lacey's parents at 101 Main Street during that time. Lacey also had the support of my parents, who still live at 98 Westford Street in Chelmsford. Unfortunately, I was able to come home every 4 or 5 weeks to visit. During those visits, I fell in love with the neighborhood and became acquainted with the neighbors on Burton Lane. Because of my job, Lacey and I lived away from Chelmsford for the past 6 years, both in New Mexico and Puerto Rico. The main reason we volunteered for the Puerto Rico assignment was that it guarantees our relocation back to Boston Vision with no possibility of another transfer in the future. Although I'd be permanently assigned to the Boston Division, most likely working out of the Lowell office, I will still be called away at times, leaving my family behind. Lacey and I both grew up in Chelmsford, and the past 6 years have been about one goal: to come home. Now that our time in Puerto Rico is coming to an end, the plan is coming to fruition. We see this project as an amazing opportunity to once again be around family and make up for the lost time. We would love nothing more than to build our forever home next to Lacey's parents and be only a few miles away from mine. One day when our parents need our help, we would love to be close by to take care of them. Lacey and I feel this project would really complete Burton Lane with a house that perfectly matches the character of the neighborhood. According to the plan drawn up by Brian Malesi, we have plenty of frontage and are well within all setback requirements to build our home. That, combined with the unanimous support of the entire street, we feel this project would improve the neighborhood. We hope the ZBA agrees and approves this project. Thank you, Brian O'Sullivan.
Good job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to take up too much time. Foremost, I want to apologize for my client. He did come back for the November hearing. That day, when we were chatting with Colleen, we found out that a couple of members weren't going to be there that had sat on the October hearing. and we just felt it didn't make sense to go forward. As I know the board can appreciate, Brian did go back to Puerto Rico. He wasn't able to come here again this third month in a row because of his job. But sort of sitting in for him tonight, him and Lacey, is Lacey's mom, Gina, and Brian's mom, Maureen O'Sullivan, both residents of Chelmsford. I thought maybe it'd be helpful just to, expedite the matter for the board, is to kind of differentiate this application and some of the concerns you heard with the last application. First off, with regards to shape of the lot, as I mentioned at the last hearing, this lot is more than 4 times deep as it is wide. Very unusual. I haven't been able to find another lot in the area that has that type of topography. There's also an odd jog in the one of the boundary lines. So I think it's certainly within the board's purview to find that, as the fact finder, that the shape of the lot is unique. With regards to detriment to the neighborhood, unusual for this board in a variance request to get an application that is supported by not only every abutter, but every single house on the neighborhood that came to the last meeting to speak or submitted letters. So you've got the entire neighborhood and every abutter to this project telling the board that they don't feel it would be detrimental to the neighborhood, but that in fact it would be an enhancement to the neighborhood. So I think there's no risk there of detriment or harm to the public good. We talked a lot about the last meeting how there were other examples of the board granting a variance for lot size. We talked about the Groton Road project. I actually brought a proposal before this board a couple years ago on Donald Ave and got the support of the board for a variance for a lot area. The other thing that I would say that differentiates this from the last application, where that person bought the land going into it knowing that they didn't have the required square footage when they bought the lot from the town to put a house there. Lacey's parents have lived here for more than 35 years at a time when this strip of Main Street was half-acre zoning. And at some point, the town turned this into full-acre zoning. But, this house, this application, if they had done it 35 years ago, they would have been able to do it by right. They had no need to do it. They didn't, I don't even know if they had kids. I don't know how old Lacey is.
Burton Lane didn't exist.
Burton Lane didn't exist. They didn't have children. This is an opportunity 35-plus years later to subdivide this lot, have their daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren living there. And we think it would just be a great win for the town as a whole and for this family as a whole. So I just wanted to kind of point out some of the differences between what's been before you tonight with this proposal versus the last.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Remember last meeting that you said you gave us that court case?
Yes.
Well, that court case wasn't some kind of boating operation?
Yeah, it was a variance that was granted by the town of Salem, I believe.
Yeah, I think so, Salem.
To put a boat. It was like a boat repair facility that could take the boats out of the water.
Right.
So that they could be repaired and put back in. And in that case, the town granted the variance. And what the court found is that safety concerns could be one other example in which the board could grant a variance. And specifically, they said if the variance either diminished the risk of harm or prevented greater harm potentially from happening to person or property, that would be one of many reasons that a board could grant it.
That doesn't make any sense here. Because we're not doing boats here, are we? I mean.
No, it just came in under the.
He was going the safety
Yeah.
aspect of
It's a
having the
safety factor
family.
for whom?
So it'd be the safety factor for the family. So as you heard in Brian's letter, not so recently, he was called away on his FBI duty for a full year. Lacey had to go back to the States and live with her mother and father, while he was dealing with this special assignment with the FBI. So certainly that was a safety issue, that she just chose to go home and be with her family. Same thing here, even though he would be stationed here, there would be times in which he'd be called away, and certainly there would be a benefit to someone being in that line of work to be close to their family. But again, we don't think that's the only hardship that the town could find. The town could certainly find that a hardship was created by the town rezoning this land after after Gina and her husband purchased it in the early 80s. So that's just one of many ways the board could find a hardship, or that the state has upheld hardship. But I think it's certainly a much different situation than a hardship that they went into when they purchased this land. It wasn't that way.
Well, I guess I understand that, Phil, but I just don't agree, that's all.
Yeah, that's, again, it was just one example of hardship, not, and I don't think that the only example you could find for hardship here.
Well said, Brian, thanks.
Very well. You ladies can feel free to ask any questions you have. Have you got them, just to be clear? You don't get to vote, but you can ask all the questions you'd like. Steve, do you have any questions? We can open this up to the audience. Nancy, Jackie?
No questions.
Is there anyone in the audience like to speak this evening, either in favor or in opposition to this project? Seeing none, we have had a great deal of support from the neighborhood on this. I think we should close the public hearing unless there are any other questions for...
Is there any other lot that's 40,000 feet in the neighborhood?
Yes, so the
Pull that
direct
up.
abutter here would be a half-acre lot. And then obviously across the street on Main Street, you've got some half-acre lots. Burton Lane was built out more recently. Some of these houses are fairly new, within the last 20 years, 15 years. But you would have certainly a direct abutter that would be a half-acre. Which, again, Main Street was until they rezoned it.
All of them are.
I think we certainly have unique lot shape.
Do a motion to close the hearing?
Second?
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. We can take this up.
I went back and I looked at that Groton Road decision. That was a lot more land. It was 70,000, just over 70,000 square feet. So,
So, my,
That they split.
right.
Right, and this is only splitting 60.
is it 60?
42.
42, 43 roughly.
Okay.
So I personally like everything with the background, with what they're trying to achieve, near the family and whatever. My overriding concern is going into it, taking a lot, splitting it into non-conforming lots to put something on the second. Yeah, I think that's a tough call to make as a generalization.
Yeah, I agree, and I guess if any of them were acceptable, this would be, this is some kind of almost 600 feet of frontage between the two lots. It really is, challenging to say the lot should have been cut out a long time ago, and it wasn't, I think. And I think it's possible that number 3 was named number 3 because the town anticipated that to happen, but zoning did change.
But that was back when the zone, when there was a half acre.
But every lot on Burton is significantly bigger, so if that was the intent, that lot should have been bigger then.
The lot was as big, or is as big,
No, like every one on Burton is like an acre or so.
and this would also be an acre combined, as it is now.
Because Burton wasn't there.
Right.
Actually, the frontage here on Main Street even adds to that 600 feet. Any other discussion?
Burton went in at 1987.
And when is that when it changed from half acre to full?
I can't tell you that from this, but
The street went in at
the first,
87.
yes, the first house was built in 1987. I don't know when the zoning changed.
I would imagine that in 87, then an acre would have been required.
40,000, we don't require an acre,
A builder's acre, yeah.
a builder's acre. I like that.
Perhaps a motion is called for.
To get it started, I'll make a motion that we approve 101 Main Street for the variance to make a non-conforming lot out of, two non-conforming lots out of one lot.
Any second?
Second the motion. I'll second the motion.
Oh, we have a second. Jackie? All in favor? I think I sail alone here.
I think you did.
All opposed? Motion does not pass, 4-1. Well, I get it. So
It's a rough night so far.
our next hearing is a new public hearing, 220 Acton Road. Teresa Cormier is seeking a special permit under 195-6-1 to construct a limited accessory apartment and 195-8E2, which will increase the square footage over the 30% allowable and any other relief that may be deemed necessary.
Hi, I'm Teresa Cormier from 220 Acton Road.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Talk to us a little about what you have planned here.
We're seeking to do a in-law apartment. In addition, we have a permit to do an addition, and we want to do the in-law apartment.
So you dimensionally meet the requirements. Very good, very good. Anybody got a plan of it? I got a plan of it.
It's under construction, so one of the plans might be really marked up.
What is it?
It's under construction.
So they received the permit.
She's
and
here on
didn't get
Marty's
the-
suggestion that it was gonna end up as an in-law apartment anyway, so why not ask?
Okay.
So the structure's being built.
The structure's being built by right, but they'd like to put a kitchen in it, and maybe ultimately it would be an in-law. Do you want to explain what you're?
Yeah, so we want to put a kitchen in for my parents. My parents are going to move in the apartment.
They have, on the plans here, 730 feet, which is under our 750 maximum. Obviously, the structure is by right. So we just need this out.
So the only reason they're here is for getting the
To get
in-law.
the in-law.
Kitchen.
Okay.
Right, all the metro, everything's met. We just need permission to do it. I have a couple letters here that I will read in. That's the legal notice. Community Development has no comments. Center Water has no comments. Police have no comments regarding 220 Acton Road. Good to know. Anyone in the audience who'd like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this, please approach the podium. Seeing none.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, Brian.
Second?
Second by Steve, all in favor?
All right.
Take this up right now.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the special permit under 195-6.1 for the limited access apartment on 220 Acton Road.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Jackie, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
First, good luck tonight.
I was thinking that myself.
Every meeting.
It's Jamie.
Jamie, I'm sorry. Yeah, leave that like
What
that.
have you been calling her?
I called her Jamie.
Oh, because there used to be a
Third
Jackie.
meeting in a row.
There used to be a Jackie. We like Jackie. That's a compliment.
Maybe that's like a
That's
secret.
the first one, the Morosa.
That was Zero Morose.
Yeah.
That's the chairman.
Yes.
Oh, I got two.
Hey, we got one.
Jamie seconded the motion. Our next public hearing is 15 Cedar Street. Mark Chungus is seeking a special permit under 195-8E2, 195-8E1D to construct a 26 by 42 addition, which will increase the pre-existing non-conforming structure, front setback, lot area, frontage width by more than 10%. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mark Chungus. I'm the owner of record at 15 Cedar Street, North Chelmsford. My intention overall was to purchase this house and put a second floor on it. My family and I live in Lowell currently and have been trying to find a lot or a house to convert to 2 stories for about 2.5 years. So we isolated this lot. I had done some work with the building inspector's predecessor. I did my due diligence, and when I looked at this lot, I found that it was a non-conforming lot, but it had been changed to an RC zone, and which now required 20,000 square feet. As far as front, side, and rear setbacks of the house, those still conform to RC as it stands today. And originally my idea was to add to the back of the house. And when I approached the building department, they denied that application, saying, you know, you might want to consider going to the second floor because you may meet all those requirements. Wording between the time I purchased this or was looking at it to date has changed slightly. So the house is approximately 900 square feet as it sits. We're going to be adding another almost 1,100 square feet. So we're going to be about 2,000 square feet total in the same, roughly the same footprint.
It overhangs that get you that extra
Yeah.
200
Yes.
feet?
Yep. 1 foot overhang in the front and 1 in the back. And if you look at the plot
So
plan,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go
I just wanna
ahead,
ask
sir.
Sean, it's not a dimensional issue if it's an overhang, it's just the 10% of the,
Over the 10% increase in structure size.
so we do not have a dimensional issue. We're just looking at the standard, it's
10%.
larger than is approved, and we can make that decision pretty easily. Go ahead, sir, I'm sorry.
no, the only thing I added, I'm sorry, the only thing I added was the new overhang that you mentioned. I just wanted the engineers to make sure that that was measured properly. So if you look at this, you have to the existing house, but also to the new overhang, and even to the eaves, but the town of Chelmsford doesn't
Required.
measure the eaves. So we were in compliance. I felt very comfortable with the results of our data survey.
Okay. The board have any questions of Mr. Chungus this time?
So the front setback is getting worse?
No, it
no-
has not, there's,
All the same.
I'm just looking at the,
no,
it
Previous.
says front setback.
That's the previous
I
non-conforming.
thought that was a little oddly worded as well.
It says it's
Yeah,
gonna
no.
increase the pre-existing non-conforming. So I was going by the increase.
no. This is a land survey done by Hancock Associates, and I had them locate the house as it exists. And from the nearest corner of the house to the lot line is 21 point, that's with the eaves, I'm sorry, it's 23.7 to the existing building. the nearest point. And then they do give you the proposed porch, and they also give you the proposed building, the second floor, which is 22.9.
Does the porch extend past what's there now?
Yes, by 2 feet.
Okay, so that is a dimensional requirement then? 'Cause
No,
we're
no,
going
no.
into-
No,
It's
no.
RC
it's-
zone, so it's a 20-foot front setback, and it's a 12-foot side. So he's within in zoning. Are you okay, Charlie?
Okay, Tony?
So it,
Breathe? Yes? Okay, all right.
so the zoning does meet. It's 21 feet, whereas it's a front 20-foot setback.
So I understand that he's still not looking for a variance or special permit for the dimensional requirement.
Correct, just the increase in structure size.
Right, so we're just
Right.
looking at a footage area.
I
Right.
was going by the listed things here.
Yeah, no, I think the list is somewhat confusing, but that's
Yeah.
really not, the agenda states, where'd we go?
Pre-exist, more than 10%.
The addition which will increase the pre-existing non-conforming structure, front setback, lot area, frontage, and width by more than 10%. But realistically, we're just looking at the 10% increase.
Yeah,
Or the
it-
over 10% increase.
Yeah, the lot is pre-existing non-conforming, the structure is not.
Take a breath.
Excuse me, Brian.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna take this time to read in the letters. Community Development regarding 15 Cedar Street has no concerns. The Water Department regarding 15 Cedar Street has no concerns, no comments. The Police regarding 15 Cedar Street have no comments. That is all my letters.
There was something from engineering, I wasn't able to print it, but you'll be notified during your building process. It was nothing.
Okay.
I'm going to open this up to the audience. If anyone has concerns or comments regarding this application, now is the time.
Hey guys, I'm quick. So my name is Bob DeCoste. I'm the owner of 17 Cedar Street as the abutter, and wanted to just echo my family's support for the project. We think this is moving the neighborhood in the positive direction. We'd like to continue to see that wind moving. That's all we got.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Kevin Kane. I live at 12 Cedar Street, and I have no problems with what he's doing, what he plans to do. I think it improved the property a lot. So a positive consideration on your part would be good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You okay? Got on the wrong page.
My name is Jean-Baptiste Seton, and then I'm at 16 Cedar Street. And then I'd like to say it's about time, because that house has been vacant for a while. Then it will bring the property values up in the area. That's all I need to say.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments this evening regarding 15 Cedar? Seeing none, if I could get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Uh-oh.
I'll make a motion to approve the special permit under 195-8-E2 for 15 Cedar Street with the consideration for all the letters.
Second.
Second by Charlie. All in favor?
All right. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Moving right along, the shinier side of the coin.
Yeah, I'm here.
The next application is 8 Pine Needle Street. Cindy Kim and Kenneth.
Can we take a 5-minute?
We can take 5.
What's wrong?
5-minute break.
Like a break.
Oh,
Union contract, I gotta give her a 5
Union
minutes.
contract. I'll go with her.
Can't get my name right, at least.
Okay, I'm gonna read the application and then we'll
Good
talk to you.
evening.
Good phone.
Okay.
8 Pine Needle Street, Cindy Kim and Kenneth Ohm, I hope I pronounced that right, are seeking a special permit under 195-8E2 to construct a 20 by 20 addition and a 10 by 10 deck, which will increase the pre-existing non-conforming structure, front setback, lot area, lot frontage, width by more than 10%, and a new 4 by 6 roof over the front door, which will increase the non-conformity front setback. So, except for the front porch, this is the same as the previous application. And we have a front porch on this one as well. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Cindy. We moved to Chelmsford about 5 years ago. When we moved, we only have one little one and my son. Now our family growing and we would hope to have a addition to a room. So we're hoping the town could approve what project we are going to do, which is a master suite with additional deck in the back.
Excellent.
420's here. Sorry.
Want to say hi?
Place and deck.
Okay, there we go. So the front roof is over an existing step. Getting a roof requires a special permit. And the other one, where'd that plot plan go there?
I'm trying to, hold on, I'm just trying to show you the neighborhood. There we go. And then the survey. This is the little roof.
That's the only dimensional change there, is the 4 by 6 roof over what is likely an existing set of steps.
What is the required front setback for this district?
Is it RC?
Let's see.
Well, it becomes pre-existing, so I'm
Yeah, but
just got a,
doesn't have the nice little table.
Considered RB. None of them meet RB.
RB's 40 feet?
Yep. So it becomes pre-existing, so it's not, we're extending the non-conformity
By 4 feet.
4
or-
feet.
Yep.
Or 24 feet total.
What do you mean 24 feet total?
6 by 4,
Oh,
24 square feet.
okay. And then the other thing is the 10% size increase, that's the other.
The 10 by 10 deck to the rear, which should be 40 feet as well, right? The
Yeah, but we got
RC
more
is
than-
40 to the front?
Oh, RC is 20,
Okay, yeah.
But
And
where-
then the rear is
but this is RB, correct?
I think so.
Piney, the whole place is
It's that
RB?
funky little neighborhood on the other side of 495
495,
from
right,
Carlisle
right.
Street. So zoning is,
So, yeah, they don't have frontage, they don't have lot size, they don't have minimum area, and I don't think any of the homes over there do. That's-
nothing does. Yes,
They
it
just
is
fall under
considered
the
RB.
umbrella of the zoning.
It is considered RB right there.
And it's only a special permit, so we don't even need a hardship.
Yeah, it's across
20
495.
by 20 addition, 10 by 10 deck, and little roof.
They call it the funky little neighborhood.
Yeah, I've been in there like once, actually.
So the tight spot here is 22, and off the side,
It's 25, right? It's supposed to be 25?
25 to the side,
to the side,
And then to the rear?
30.
and now it goes to 22.
With the porch.
With the addition.
Oh, no, that's the addition.
Yeah, the addition makes it 22 in the back.
But Jamie, so with these requests are special permits because they're already into those setbacks. So there's no variance required, so it's not as, it's more discretional, that's all.
So what was it before?
These are already non-conforming.
Right.
It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot.
They got no place else to go. Literally.
Makes sense.
All right, you guys can ponder. I'm going to read the letters. On 15 Cedar Street, the Water Department has no concerns. On 15 Cedar Street,
We're on
Pine
Pine
Needle.
Needle.
Pine Needle.
oh, well, I'm not gonna read these then.
Try again.
Good thing
Pine
somebody's
Needle.
awake. I'm gonna fake cough and get out of this like Charlie.
Yeah, exactly. The whole board can go.
All right, on 8 Pine Needle Street, we have no comments from the community development and no comments from the police, and those are the only 2 letters I have.
In the rear, are we making a new nonconformance?
Yes.
We're extending the
rear.
nonconformity.
No, there was none before, because it's 30 in the back. We're at 22 now, but that's because we added this.
So we would have been 42.
Yeah, because this is only 6 feet here, I guess, so.
Right, but this is 20, this room is 20 by 20.
The shed is the nonconformity, you know,
But it
even
would have
that
been
needs.
measured to that, right, from the back, not to this.
Good point, yeah, so we would have had 42, 3 minus 6. So 30, 36, and 30, so it would have conformed in the rear.
So we're creating a new nonconformity in the rear.
Yes.
And that still only requires a special permit because it's already broken.
Yeah, it's
Because the
already
existing
pre-existing
lot is
nonconforming.
non-conforming. There's a new non-conforming on an existing non-conforming lot.
We're just gonna make it non-conform more.
Yes, that is what we would be doing.
Which is a lot better than taking a conforming house and making it
No,
nonconforming.
that ain't.
So that's why it's discretional.
And there's no place to go.
I'm gonna open
Yeah,
this
this
up
is true.
to the audience, to see if there's anyone like to speak in favor or in opposition to this project. Seeing none,
I make a motion to close public hearing?
if we have no further
Comments?
questions for, we have a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
Steve cut,
You get credit for being here, dude.
Steve cut in
Thank
front of
you.
Nancy and got the second. All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
I think we can take this up.
I will make a motion to approve the special permit under 195-8E2 for 8 Pineal Street for the addition, the deck, and the new roof over the front door, while making considerations for all the letters that were read in.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Second by Julie. By Jamie.
Jesse?
All in favor?
Yeah.
Five
Luck
oh.
with it.
Thank you.
We're here
Have a
while
good
we
night.
cook.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye.
So does that make the minutes of my votes invalid because he's not using the right name? Does it make my votes invalid?
No, of course not. I know who the heck you are.
Our next application is a new public hearing. 9 Rogers Road, the estate of Phyllis Clark, MP 13207, for an administrative appeal of the decision of the building commissioner of the town of Chelmsford for determination that this property is not grandfathers pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, and/or Section 195-9 of the Chelmsford zoning bylaws. I assume so you'd like the appeal to be heard first?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. if I
We have an
could.
additional item on the docket, should this appeal go in one direction or the other, I believe.
Correct. Yeah, I guess I would like to, well, first of all, my name is Greg Halladina, 56 Central Square, and I'm the attorney for the applicant, which is the estate of Phyllis Clark. I'm here with members of the Clark family, including Alan Clark, who's the personal representative of the estate. We have an administrative appeal of a denial of our building permit. We had requested a determination from the from the building commissioner prior to Mr. Shanahan that we were grandfathered. There was an opinion letter written from Mr. Haverty indicating that we were not grandfathered. And this is an administrative appeal of that refusal to issue a building permit on the grandfathered status. We also have a second hearing, which is separate, regarding a variance, which has simultaneously been requested, but I'll just address the administrative appeal of the grandfathering determination
Terrific.
at the outset. The property at 9 Rogers Road is a vacant parcel. It's undersized. It's 10,463 square feet. It's been in the Clark family for 65 years. In 1953,
I'm gonna pull it up.
oh, okay.
What zone is this? Zoning, RA, RB, RC?
RB. It might just be Rogers.
Oh,
I think the assessor's records, or the GIS doesn't have it.
Yeah, RB's.
why can't I click on this? I know where it is. I can find it if this doesn't come up.
Yeah, I think it's just identified as Rogers Road without a street number.
Oh, gotcha.
There you go.
Parcel.
It's 13-20-7. There you go, that's perfect, thank you. In 1953, the lot outlined in blue was purchased by Lida Clark. It was a buildable lot at that time when she purchased it, and she continued to own it separately. It was not in common ownership with any of their budding parcels, and I've submitted the documentation on the chains of title to town council in my letter. It was protected, therefore, from zoning increases from the time it was purchased in 53 as a buildable lot up through 1963, when the area, frontage, and side yard setbacks required reached their current levels that they are at today. And then in 1972, what Lida Clark did was she transferred this then buildable lot to her son and her daughter-in-law, her son Bernard V. Clark and her daughter-in-law Phyllis Clark. Since then, Mr. Clark passed away in 1997, and Mrs. Clark passed away in 2016, so it's the estate of Phyllis Clark that owns that parcel that's outlined in blue. Now, the issue arises that brings us here is that Bernard Clark and Phyllis Clark had owned adjacent property at 11 Sharon Ave. And I'll just point that out, or that's the house right here. It was a separate lot that Bernard Clark and Phyllis Clark purchased in 1950. They built a home on it in 1953, and they lived there throughout their lives.
So they did not become conjoined at any time?
They did. What happened is, in 1972, when Lida transferred that vacant lot into the title of Bernard and Phyllis, who had been longtime owners of that neighboring house lot, there was a merger of title at that point. But 11 Sharon Ave has, since the passing of Phyllis Clark, been sold by the estate. So now that lot outlined in blue is, again, separately owned, and it has effectively been demerged from the abutting house lot that was sold by the estate. Now, town council opined in his letter, which is part of my package, that 9 Rogers, the vacant lot, merged for zoning purposes with 11 Sharon. And he cites and relies on, among other cases, the case of Preston versus the Board of Appeals of Hull. And that's a case where a purchaser bought 2 non-conforming lots, and during his time of ownership, the zoning increased, and they merged. This can be distinguished, though, because here the applicant only owns 9 Rogers, the one outlined in blue. The other property, 11 Sharon, is gone. It's owned by a third party now who purchased it. The cases when you talk about merger, it's generally one owner who has 2 lots that are abutting. This is a case, and there are a few others which I have cited in my correspondence with town council, but this is one of those few cases where you have lots that were merged and are now no longer merged. And my position would be they are separate lots, and 9 Rogers, the vacant lot, remains separate. And you're really not setting a precedent here by allowing for a building permit on some lot that had previously been merged, because there is a separate identity for 9 Rogers, that vacant lot. It was deeded separately to Lida, and then a separate deed to her son and daughter-in-law, apart from what was done when the son and daughter-in-law purchased the neighboring property and built their home there. It has been separately assessed by the town. There are separate tax bills that have been paid for years. There are...
Was it assessed as a buildable lot?
It is presently assessed residential, is what it's called. Residential, and there's some initials after that.
So
It is now isolated after 11 Sharon was sold. Clearly, the intent all along was for that to be a separate lot. Interestingly, I guess I would pose the question to the board, if 11 Sharon, which is undersized, the neighboring house lot, that was sold to a third party, and that third party had counsel, he bought the property, he didn't even want to purchase the adjacent vacant lot. He's okay, he's got his house, he lives there, he's fine. Why? Because he's grandfathered. Why then aren't we with the vacant lot that had previously been adjoining, why aren't we grandfathered as well? I'd submit that we are, and for that reason, I would ask that we be granted a building permit for that now separate lot, which has demerged from the adjoining parcel, which it had previously been in ownership for some period of time. Mr. Clark, the personal representative of the estate, is here. He can tell you a little about the history, briefly, about the separate identity of that lot and the background. And if Alan wants to address you, he can fill you in on that as well.
Good evening. My name is Alan Clark. I'm the oldest child of my mother, Phyllis Clark, and I'm the personal representative of her estate. The only reason that I can figure out why we're here is because of a technicality. Had my grandmother deeded this lot to my parents in a different format, instead of in the same format as the house lot, that is, their names and joint ownership, this lot would clearly be a grandfathered lot. Unfortunately, my father would have not known reasons to take title differently, and it was it was deeded to my mother and father in 1972. And the zoning that forced it to merge took place in 1976. So he had no reason to, at that time, to put it into a different entity to prevent the merging. Had he probably known that would happen, I'm not so certain that he would, because he considered my mother an equal partner, and what was his was hers, and what was hers was his. So I'm not surprised that it was owned jointly by my parents. I think it's important. I listened to the other hearings where, they're trying to create a non-conforming a lot. This I think is a little different. This is a lot, was a lot. It's owned now in separate ownership. We're here not as speculators. We're simply trying to liquidate my mother's estate. I do want to point out, my mother lived in Chelmsford for 87 years. And her children, my siblings, we all lived in Chelmsford. We went to Chelmsford High School. Our education was completely in Chelmsford. Both my mother's parents and my father's parents lived almost their entire lives in Chelmsford. My parents, as I said, they lived their entire lives. So my family's been kind of good citizens of Chelmsford for over 100 years. My mother taught school in Chelmsford for over 30 years. My father was a town rep from when you change from a traditional town meeting to town rep until he died. He was a long-term water commissioner. He was a long-term scout leader. I guess my point is we're not trying to be speculators trying to profit unreasonably. I'm a fire chief. My brother has lived in Chelmsford his entire life. He worked at one time for the town as a building inspector. He's a long-term water commissioner. My sister's lived in Chelmsford her whole life. She currently works for the Chelmsford Fire Department. My younger sister is not here tonight, taught at Chelmsford High. There's nothing new here. This has been a lot of record for over 70 years. It's been owned in my family for over 60 years. It has always been a lot of record. It has been taxed as a separate lot for over 70 years. It's shown on the tax map as a separate lot. It is assessed as a separate lot. The town provided a sewer hookup to serve that lot when they extended the sewer. Any abutters were certainly aware that it's a lot. If you check the record, it clearly is shown a lot. We're not trying to create a lot that's non-conforming. It's a lot. We ask that the board recognize that again, that the only reason why we're here tonight is due to a technicality and how the title was taken over 40 years ago. We simply ask that you consider the circumstances and do what is proper and correct and rule that this is in fact a buildable lot. Please recognize that my family has owned the lot for 60 years. Again, it's always been assessed as a lot. It shows on the tax maps as a lot. It had a building permit to fill the lot in preparation of building a house. It has town-provided sewer hookup in anticipation that this lot was built upon.
When was the building permit issued?
Back in 1987.
Just didn't move ahead with it?
No. So, the purpose of this board, I think, is to be a sounding board that can right wrongs that may not be technically correct, and we simply ask that you consider those circumstances in your decision. Recognize we're not speculators. We're hoping to be able to convert this lot to cash and be able to fund our grandchildren's education. And I just, again, want to thank you for the time that you dedicate to the town of Chelmsford. There's probably better things that you could be doing with your time, but I'm not so certain that there's better things for the town. Your dedication is extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the gentleman?
Yeah, I have one question. The last time you were here, what was it, like exactly 2 years ago?
1 year ago.
Oh, it was 1 year ago.
Yeah, we were here in January, nearly a year ago, and that was on a variance application. Again, what we're here for right now is a determination that we're grandfathered. We're asking for that from the board tonight.
Okay.
The variance was back in January, and it was withdrawn without prejudice. There was neighborhood opposition. A couple of neighbors were concerned. But in reviewing it, we came to the conclusion that this is a lot that is grandfathered. And I get back to that same question. If it merged with the neighboring house lot, yet the neighboring house lot is now owned by a third party, and it's legal and someone's occupying it, why? Because it's grandfathered. If they're grandfathered, why aren't we? That's really what it comes down to.
I can't remember, there's one more thing. I just, it's hard, well, it was a long time ago when I read all the briefs that you had like a year ago, like you said. And there's one of the little comments from someone, I don't know who it was from, because I don't have it. I can't find it on the new thing. But it said one of the things was we're filling in the rear lot just to have a place to play ball or something. It didn't say filling in the rear lot to build a house. But that was a long time ago, and I know I don't have the wording correct, but it was something like that.
Okay, again, I don't know what the permit was for at that time, but what we are seeking is just a building permit on this.
Maybe, okay, help me with the timeline. So in 72.
Correct.
It was owned, both lots were owned by the same people.
Starting in 1972, Lita Clark transferred the vacant lot, which is outlined in blue, to her son and daughter-in-law, who also since 1950 had owned that neighboring house lot, and they built a house there.
So one couple owned both lots.
They did. It's undisputed. There was common ownership for some time, but now there is no longer common ownership.
So were they merged by zoning? When they did the zoning in 76, they counted that as one lot for zoning purposes?
Well, I think I think the argument might be that because they were in common ownership, there's merged for zoning purposes.
Right.
From my review of the blue book that Colleen provided, I think as of 1963, you needed 40,000 square feet for a buildable lot in an RB district. And since we were isolated, we complied. A complying buildable lot was transferred, but unfortunately, the technicality is the neighboring owner owned the house. And there was a merger of ownership, there was common ownership. But again, it's demerged now, it's not owned by the same people. And I get back to that question I raised before. If that lot, the house lot, which was sold to a buyer who had counsel, borrowed money from a bank, was a straight transaction. If that person has an undersized legal lot, it's because it's grandfathered. If that house lot is grandfathered after the ownership is demerged, why aren't we?
That lot had a pre-existing, but that house was there
Correct.
prior to separation, there during the merge, and then the unmerging again.
Right.
The house is always, so that lot's always had a structure.
It did, yes. In
Okay.
1953, that house lot was
Okay.
built with a house.
So now we went from a conforming lot by both parties in the 76 zoning change to separating, but that one had the pre-existing non-conforming building. It was there prior to the zoning law changes.
Yeah, the house was there since 1953. And there was a period of time, admittedly, when there was common ownership, but then it's been demerged since then.
Sean, a possible definition on demerged?
So, I don't know if, looking at the records, you've seen what town council is submitted, and Mark Dupel in town council had already been very in-depth in this. So I've kind of stayed away from it at the request of town council because of what's already been
So it's already been
written,
hashed out.
and that's why we decided to put it back before the board.
It says that it's determined at the time of the last zoning change rendering the property non-conforming, and that a subsequent transfer to bring the property into common ownership with adjoining property would not matter. That's the Preston case.
I feel like this is, granted, they didn't purchase the lot. I mean,
It's definitely a complex, I mean, it's difficult to discern.
I still don't understand the merging. When they gifted, I guess, that lot to their son or daughter-in-law or whoever, why would they merge them for zoning purposes? Like for tax
It's done by, if the same person owns it, it becomes one.
Is that a Chelmsford? That's
No, that's.
Oh, that's a state
State law, I guess, Mass General law.
So for tax
operational law.
purposes, it would become one, like you'd get one
No,
tax.
they're still
It
separate.
remains separate.
Yeah, the common ownership of the two adjoining lots, if they're both grandfathered lots and there's common ownership, for zoning, if they're still both separate lots, but for zoning purposes, you can treat them as one.
So they could
The idea
use the
being
other
you'll
lot
have enough land to
as a
try to get closer to conforming. But the problem here is they're split off. They're no longer owned commonly. So what you have now is a grandfathered house on an undersized lot, and you have a vacant lot, which should also be grandfathered. That's essentially what we're saying.
Yeah, but if we didn't grandfather in the lot with the structure in it, we wouldn't grandfather any house with the lot with the structure that was non-conforming to new zoning. Right?
Well, the lot next door, the house lot, that's occupied by someone who has no issues with zoning. They're occupying a grandfathered lot, presumably. No one's taking any action to shut them down. It's because they've split off from us. We are now isolated.
Because now
We should be-
it's not common ownership.
Correct. That's exactly it.
But it's always had two separate tax identities.
Oh, absolutely.
It still
There's a
does.
strong separate identity case here. As I said, there's a sewer betterment for that vacant lot.
And
There's
the
always,
separation, so.
Right here.
When the separation was made, the 1320 stayed in the same ownership. right?
Correct.
That has not changed ownership since before, after, or during any changes of
It's
zoning.
1950.
It's in an
Okay.
estate now, but
Yeah.
yes, the
Okay.
same ownership prevails.
So they own that lot well before 40,000.
Oh, way before, yeah.
Came an issue.
Yeah, for lack of putting a structure there. Now they can't. It was a buildable lot at one point, and now it is no longer.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the only thing I haven't seen is the building permit that was issued back in, I think, '87, you said?
Yeah, it was issued by Tony for filling. Just says filling
So I
lot with
look
fill
at
from
Mr.
sewer excavation, okay by building inspector Tony.
We can still get a hold of him.
Mr. Zagzus.
We can still find him.
Yeah, I can call him.
So, but it wasn't to build per se, it was
No, it was
just
just it was when they were
Fill.
doing the sewer and so forth, and the fill was free,
Pass that.
basically, so we said, well, we try to utilize, made it easy for the town to get rid of it and, leveled the lot off. If you look at the old,
The old what?
so if you look at the old topo map, the lot dropped off like 12 to 14 feet from Rogers Road. So now it's
It's a
kind of
building
level on
permit
that.
to
I can pull that up.
fill. It's not to build a house.
So,
So get a fill in the lot. So this was pre-conservation, so you had to get permission to fill your lot.
Oh, you did, okay.
And they said it was okay to do it from the sewer excavation, which doesn't almost matter.
a question about grandfathering lots, and I guess I'll direct it at the new building commissioner. If you have a lot that's from, let's say 1953, for example, when it was meeting zoning, and you didn't join, split, whatever, you just had that lot, maintained it in your family for 100 years, and zoning changed, because that lot existed back when zoning was what it was in 53, is the grandfather clause that you are always supposed to be able to build on that lot perennially just because it was buildable at one time?
So generally, as long as the lot stays within that common ownership or that ownership, yes, it would be grandfathered.
Okay, so as long as the
Same owner.
Correct.
So if it gets sold, you lose your grandfathered.
Sold. I would have to look to see whether gifting it to a family member made any difference as to sold. But I would think that it would stay under the same estate, family ownership.
If I could put the grandfathering protects you from changes in zoning.
Right.
Yeah.
You
so
own a
that-
lot,
yeah.
I think the question is
zoning
now is,
changes.
does gifting via an estate, because it's technically not the same people anymore, correct?
Right.
It's their children, so does the gifting technically change ownership, or no, because it's still within the estate? That, I think, would be,
So the cases that I have seen, and to state one directly right now, I wouldn't be able to, but common ownership would remain as the estate through a gift.
So when my grandmother purchased this lot from Marinell, it was shortly after it had been subdivided. When my grandmother purchased the lot, it was a conforming lot. When my grandmother conveyed it to my mother and father, it was a conforming lot. It was in 1976, or somewhere abouts, the lot became non-conforming under Massachusetts law because it was non-conforming and owned by the same entity. For zoning purposes, it merged. Had it been conveyed to me in 1972, it would be still a lot that conformed and would be grandfathered. I believe anyway. It would be because it was prior to all that changes. So, the only reason why title has changed is because of death. My father died, and then my mother died.
so it was passed on to you.
It's in the estate.
It's in the estate,
We're
so-
trying to do something with it, and right now it's just in limbo. Although we keep paying taxes on it.
Thank you.
So, who are they asking?
Hi, Bruce Clark, 30 Chelmsford Court. I just wanted to address, it seemed like a couple of you had a question. So really what happened was it was a grandfathered lot. The state came out with this law, the zoning act, chapter 40A, back in 1975, came effective 1976. And under section 6, it provides for grandfathering of lots and so forth in here, in merging of lots. So depending on which court you went to, and I think town council mentioned it also, there's a 1985 case that says that when, in the way the words are in here, it was a case up in Ipswich, that the lots didn't merge because they were held in separate ownership when the zoning changed. So the zoning changed in 1954, and then 1961, 1963, they became 40,000. They went from 10,000 to 30,000 to 40,000 square foot lots or something in that neighborhood. So some of the lawyers and some of the courts have interpreted saying it's not merged because it was not held, but some of the newer cases are saying it is merged. So basically what we're looking for is relief that it was merged or not merged. You know, the town is saying it is merged, you know, so we're looking for relief. The easiest thing to do would be to just say yes. You know, it didn't merge because of Chapter 40A, so thank you.
Can I just make a little comment?
Please.
You said it correctly. Like, we're sitting here and we do this, you know, for free, of course. And it'd be better to be sitting at home and, you know, watching whatever. And we come across these once in a while, and I always think, like, this is really difficult. Why doesn't the land court in Boston take care of this? I mean, why should you have, like, the Board of Appeals take care of this? So just my only comment is, I think this is a land court thing. I know we can decide it, but it's just complicated. Thanks.
I think the board's charged with deciding it, so.
I don't think it's right. Okay?
So, there's always that
The
option.
question is to make it back into a individual lot, is what you're asking?
It is an individual lot.
It's always been an
because
individual lot.
the
So we're
original
saying-
property has been sold. So right now, you have an isolated individual lot under the estate's ownership.
Okay.
The estate did own both. I think the idea of splitting it when they both were sold is, but it's been done. It's
Right.
recorded and ready. There's no, you know, it's done. That was a legitimate legal
So even if
sale.
even if we approve the grandfathering of this lot to be buildable for the current owners, if they were to sell it to the land, it wouldn't be buildable to the new owners because they wouldn't
That's a good question.
Well, that's
belong
the variance that they need
to
after
the
this,
Clarks,
right? That's the
right?
second part of it.
If the appeal is,
We could say it's
If we
grandfathered for the Clarks,
approve the
yes, but
appeal,
it's a non-buildable selling lot.
a building permit would be issued. But I'm lost with that as far as the variance is required to build on this lot. Would they have to go through that process as well?
It's my understanding if the board issues a variance, the board issues variance to whether the lot now you've considered that grandfathered is now conveyed, the variance is issued. So if you issue a variance, it would go to whoever either purchases.
Right, but at this point, if we acted on just the appeal and said, okay, this is an isolated, this is a buildable lot, would they be charged with coming back and fitting a house on this 10,000 square foot lot?
I believe that may be something that's already waiting.
It would be grandfathered, and if you sold it to someone, as long as the person who bought it didn't own adjoining land, it would be, continue to be grandfathered.
The grandfathered clause would then go to a new owner.
Correct, provided, as long as that new owner doesn't own adjacent land, it's not gonna merge to anything, it'll stay an isolated grandfathered lot, which it currently is.
Yeah, that
So
doesn't-
if they had sold the property and that person came to seek a variance, the board would not be able to, in my understanding, grandfather. If you grandfather it, if you decide it can be grandfathered now and issue a variance for a buildable lot, for them to build a building permit for it, get a building permit for it, they could sell that because the variance was issued.
What would be the restrictions on the lot? Do you still held to the 40,000 square foot, so you'd need a variance for area, frontage? Well, frontage would probably be all right, because that's on a corner.
Yeah, I'd have to look at exactly what it would need, but it would need quite a decent variance, correct?
Already exists, who's existing.
It would be area, front, side, and rear, if you, depending on the size of the house.
But if you're gonna, I believe if you're gonna overturn the grandfather, and allow it to be a grandfather lot, by right, you would be able to build.
Yeah, it's either one or the other. It's grandfathered, and you can go ahead and build on it because those increases in the zoning that occurred while you own it are not
I'm just trying to
applicable.
understand, and I really, not trying to confuse things, I haven't really made up my mind, but if it is approved as a buildable lot, what are the setbacks for it?
So, could I share something?
Absolutely.
So I moved from Waltham last year. My husband and I owned a property that was similar. It was 2 lots. And we had a house on 1 lot, and we had an empty lot next to us. My husband bought them 20 years ago, the house and the lot. He bought it as 1 property. We had 1 tax bill, but they were zoned as 2 separate lots. So part of the reason I got on this board actually is because we had to go before the ZBA in Waltham to get a variance for our empty lot because of the frontage carrying through halfway, one of the bylaws. We needed a few feet. We were short a few feet. But the whole merging and splitting is still confusing to me. I mean, we had 1 tax lot. We had 2 lots that had always been zoned as 2 lots. And even through sales and everything else, nothing had ever merged into 1 lot.
They could be 2 separate lots, but for zoning purposes, they're considered 1 if they are both undersized, for example.
Yeah.
But
so
once they're no longer commonly owned, which
And
is the
for the
situation here, that's why.
Grandfathering purposes, that came up during our conversations also, because we had, I had said, well, my husband bought the lot before this new bylaw was
Right.
instated.
That's very
so
similar to the
why
path
should
this
that
is taking.
apply? And that, yeah. It's just,
But you ended up selling them separately.
Yep, and we sold them separately, and yeah, the splitting, the merging and the splitting, I don't know. It's just confusing. How anyone would, why the state would merge them like that automatically, and then why.
I don't know the logic behind it, though. Sometimes it's very advantageous to buy parcels around you and get a larger parcel, so there are
Yeah, but for
reasons.
zoning purposes to combine them.
But
Like,
even
why
if
would
you,
go
if
through
you
that
could,
process?
this could
'Cause
work
that
to your
must be a
advantage
process.
as well, I guess is what I'm saying, so that might be why.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, it's definitely the
So
law, I
somebody
don't know
actually
why.
went through a process to have them merged?
No,
Or the
no,
state
it's
did
just
it
automatic.
automatically?
And they
Common
could, it
ownership.
wouldn't have mattered if that lot belonged to the Clarks or not the Clarks, because 11 was built in the 50s, well before the zoning change in 76. So
Yeah.
the merging and unmerging is really irrelevant,
The
I would
parents had just
say.
So the
deeded it
merging
to
and
one
unmerging
of
is
the
the only
two,
issue,
the husband
really.
or the wife.
So if it
They'd be
hadn't
able to
been
build it.
merged,
Right.
ever, if it had never been merged automatically, then it would be grandfathered, and this would be a non-issue. So it's
That was
really
the
the
point
merging
Mr.
and the
Clark was making.
non-merging. That's the issue.
For lack of putting a structure on it, right.
So do you have a survey of that lot?
We do, we submitted a plot
Is
plan.
there an envelope that has been included with that, for a building envelope?
All the setbacks.
No. Oh, yeah, there is actually a building shown on there. But I believe that was in connection with the variance, which is the alternative.
Where would I find?
Oh, but I'm sorry. So actually, my point was that we did have to meet the new requirements.
Yeah,
The new
thank you.
setback.
Yeah, we did have to meet the new updated requirements for building permits. Even though we had purchased it prior to those requirements being, and the lots had been split prior to the requirements and everything. The lot was like, we got the original lot plan from 1920 or whenever it was split out by the town, but, we still had to meet the updated building requirements also.
So I know Brian was concerned about the setbacks.
So even as a grandfather lot,
We have 40 feet of frontage, where we have 26 and 26. The width in feet would be 150, which I think you would go diagonally and have. You'd certainly have the frontage. 150, you'd have the frontage. Your rear setback, it's a corner lot, so
two sides.
Two sides, right. Which is 25. You have 15 and 35. So you need side setback relief, front setback relief, lot area relief.
No, lot area is grandfathered.
And that depends on how Sean is going to enforce the setbacks. Every inspector, up until Mark, enforced the setbacks of when the lot was created. I'm not sure if any of your board members, Charlie probably remembers that, though.
Remember, yeah.
Every
I remember that.
inspector, and so it's kind of up to the inspector if he's going to enforce the 40-foot front setback, or if he's going to enforce the setbacks at the time the lot was created under zoning. Furthermore, I do have a plot plan here that I can show you. I can meet the 40-foot setbacks from the front in the two sides. So the setbacks really shouldn't be an issue at this time, Brian.
Just overall lot size at this point, because I have the frontage.
You have the frontage.
You're not approving the dwelling. You're not-
Say it again?
You're not approving the dwelling. It's just showing that it can be done.
I'm just trying to understand it. It's not a large lot. I really want to do what I should be doing here. I'm not trying to have any opinion. I just want to understand what's right. I'll read the letters, so I have something better to do. I'm reading just for the administrative appeal. Community Development has no comments, yet left a note. I believe this property has previously submitted to appear before the ZBA, which is accurate, and the police have no comments. I'm going to ask if anyone in the audience would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this program, this project.
Good evening. My name's Charles LaRosa. I live at 60 Dunstable Road. So if
I can pull you up.
I'm right here. This is my property behind here. Although we thank the Clark family for their service to the town and to the state, and they've lived here for a long time. And the other thing that we've already discussed at the last meeting, no one is disputing that this is two different lots. It is two different lots. I think we all agree on that. This one is not a buildable lot. That's what is being questioned. A couple mistakes that is being said, that the person that bought the property next to it is living in the property. They're not living in the property. They're not going to live in the property. He's buying it, fixing up, and selling it. That's why he doesn't care what you guys are doing with yours, because he's not going to be there. I'm going to be here. Mr. Rawls is going to be here. This lot is not big enough for a home. If I may come over to here, where this number 35 is, this looks like this is a nice flat straight lot. Where this 35 is, there's about a 12 to 14 drop, a 12 to 14 foot drop from here down with another 7 feet, which is where my property is. So this lot that you're looking at is not what's going to be built on. The lot is actually from here to here. That's number one. Number two, the point that we keep on going back to is that it's no longer commonly owned. Well, it's not commonly owned because they chose to sell it. They chose to sell that house for a profit. They're now, what they want to do, the discussion about if it's sold, will it transfer over to the next owners to build, that's not their intentions. They've been very, very honest. Their intentions is to build, I believe, a 2,500 square foot house on this property, on this 10,000 square foot property. Those are their intentions. They're not selling the land to anyone, so that's not going to be an issue. So I think that's why myself, and if we want signatures from neighbors again, because we went through this last year, saying that it's nothing personal against the Clark family. They're a wonderful family. It's too small of a lot to jam a house in. It is a corner lot. Last year, it was highly recommended that the board members take a drive by the lot. I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to. It's not the normal, when we say it's a corner lot, it's not what you're thinking of a corner lot. The street, Rogers Road, is probably only this wide to begin with from here to here, maybe a little bit wider. It's not a corner lot that you're thinking on a main road corner lot. This is at the top of a hill corner lot. So that's all that I have to say. I'm sorry, Clarks, it's nothing personal. It's just too small of a lot to build a house on. Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Brian, do you think we should take a ride by?
I would not think that is a bad idea. I don't think
I think it's a good
everybody
idea.
has seen it. So regarding the appeal, I think that we're going to look to continue this to next month, and everyone can go by. If you think we should do it en masse, we can. If you want to do it when you're available.
Can we get clarification
Doesn't
too
drive by
on the
matter.
legal ease of the merge, unmerge, grandfather, family, trust, non-family?
We have Paul's letter, that I think he feels that it is, that Sean should not have issued a building permit. Mr. Haverty, is that correct?
He just stayed away from it.
Mr. Haverty's given us an opinion on it.
Haverty's opinion was that there should not be a building permit issued.
Property
Town council.
merged, and it does not constitute a separate valid buildable lot absent the grant of zoning relief.
So if the property did merge,
Yes.
so
I don't think there's any question the property merged.
For
how
zoning
did they
purposes.
not, for zoning, so once they sold one lot though, what does that do for zoning purposes?
It just takes then through the change of zoning, takes those two lots and redivides it, because there's no longer
So when
common
they
ownership.
sold it, when they unmerged and sold the house lot, then the second lot became conforming to current zoning laws?
Correct.
So when did the lot with the house get sold to the non-family related, non-Clark, third party, sorry?
2007.
Okay,
That's
so,
a year ago.
okay. So well after the current zoning laws have been in effect? Okay.
Just approach the podium if you have any questions, sir. Your name and address, please.
My name is Austin Rawls, and I live on 64 Dunstable Road, and I abut the property down in the back. And my concern, I'm not sure if you're talking about permit or variance. It sounds like there's two different things. I don't know if you could give a permit, you're approving your variance, the building variance?
This hearing we're having right now is called an administrative appeal, and the family has asked our board to determine whether the building inspector acted correctly in not issuing a permit, and whether to vote to override and allow that permit to be issued. There's another matter before us that would be a variance for the property.
Is that before you now, or?
It is our next hearing.
Oh, at the next hearing.
My suspicion is that they'd asked to continue that as well when we're gonna go have a site walk and look at it.
Okay, my concern is with the fill, and if they're gonna put more fill down at bottom, my property is very, very wet. And there's a spring, I was talking to him about it, that runs back there, but it's been mostly covered by the fill that was put in there. And that moisture has worked its way into my yard, and it's worried about, can't get up there with a mower, or worried about mosquitoes and that type of thing. So, but if that's more like a variance issue rather than a building permit issue.
The administrative appeal wouldn't really address that.
Okay.
But if, just for your own information, if this land is wet at this point, the other problem that the family will face is getting conservation approval, and they can't really fill in their land and create a hardship for you with that.
Yeah,
But
I
it would
don't know
be
if they're gonna
another
need to
board
fill
that
in
would look at
anymore
that.
or not. I'm not sure, but if I guess it's how they treat that property.
Can you grab the wetlands
I'm trying to pull it up. It's not acting nicely.
overlay?
Do we really need to do a
Yeah.
drive-by for the administrative appeal? I think that's more of the variance aspect.
Yeah,
Because the administrative appeal is more of like the
no
technicality
wetlands
as
there.
to the grandfather.
Yeah, we can, I mean, do you not want to look at the site and decide on the administrative appeal?
I just don't understand how that would apply to it. I mean, I have no
You make a
problem
good point.
continuing
You make a good
both.
point.
I just,
I guess
As
my,
much as you love the hanging out with us for
an extra
sidewalks
hour.
on the weekends.
This is where I need to see what the precedence is, or if there's any dictating legislation that states it was common ownership, so when the common owners chose to split and put them back into two separate lots and sell one to a third party, did they know that the second lot, they maintained ownership, did they know that it would then become subject to the current zoning laws when it became, again, two separate properties under the same, when they sold it? Does that make sense?
You can, probably at the podium, it's easier for everybody.
So the two lots have always been separate lots for tax purposes. The reason why they merged was because of state law that said that if you had a non-conforming lot, and in our case we now had two non-conforming lots, that they merged by technicality.
Okay.
Nothing happened, it just
Any lot would do that, so it doesn't have to be a non-conforming
any two
lot.
lots would have it. Interestingly, New Hampshire used to have the same law, and it caused so much grief and aggravation that lots no longer merge automatically like that. You would have to, if you wanted to merge two lots to have one big lot that had been previously approved, you would have to go before the planning board and make it one. But unfortunately, in Massachusetts, in 1976, when the law took effect, for zoning purposes and zoning purposes only, it technically merged. And we don't contest that. That was a mistake that could have been remedied had we had the foresight, because they could have deeded it to me or my brother or my sisters, and and we wouldn't be here. It's the fact that they didn't. And so the ownership was the same. And so what we're here for is simply to appeal that decision and say that you will allow them to be two lots, which they are, because they're sold separately, but that the remaining lot is grandfathered so it can be built upon. We're not here tonight to talk about anything that's going to be built, and I don't.
I'm really just trying to focus on, again, the law in 76 merged for zoning. So when the owner chose to split again to sell, what does the law state becomes of that one that they maintain, since it's no longer merged? I think that is where, because you sold it in 2017, these current zoning laws are in effect, so.
That's something that I will talk to town council and get clarification for.
Because I'm sure there's something indicated in the zoning laws of merging, then if they become unmerged again, do they then to become two separate lots to conform to current zoning at the time of unmerging?
I think the testimony from the attorney was that there are different schools of thought on that, and I think he actually specified that different courts had answered in different ways.
I'm just wondering what we hear.
We can look at that case law. They're usually not too overwhelming. From the sound of it, I think that we'd ask for continuance without a site walk. We haven't gone to the variance portion yet. And get the information from Mr. Haverty, and then any other information you'd like to support the existence of the single lot demerging, as you have said. So, that being said, and if you have other testimony tonight you'd like to put forth, we can continue this.
No, we'd be okay with continuing it, both this and the alternative relief sought, which is the variance, the next hearing.
We
Why
would
don't we
hold
just
off on the
continue?
variance
Yeah,
until
exactly.
we,
Why open the public hearing?
A suggestion would be, because I think that in a matter of fairness, if it is moved ahead and they do ask for the variance, maybe next month we can drive by and look at it, at least have a visual sense of it. So we know what we're looking at, because then, in this matter, it won't, but if they're ahead of us, again, to put it off just another month because we didn't go look, I think that would be in fairness to do that. So that being said, if I could have a motion to continue the hearing
Make a motion to
until,
continue.
oh my God,
January
January
3rd.
2019.
How is that possible?
No. January 3rd, really?
Make a motion to continue.
January
to
3rd.
2019.
We're all getting
For
old.
9 Rogers.
I'm not.
And if you could take a look at
If I had a
9
place, I
Roger
could
Street,
further.
just to get a feel for it, I think that would be helpful.
And then you'll
Should we
find,
move
you'll
ahead?
run down the case legalese on.
Yes, I will ask town council to do a little bit of research on the few definitions that we
And
need
if possible, you could
clarification.
email it before, it would be great. But if you can't,
I
we'll take
will
it
make
the
sure we
night
have it
of.
in plenty of time. I also want to make it clear that, to anybody here, that if a building permit is issued, there are strict guidelines as far as drainage and if there is a house that's going to be built. So that drainage would have to be maintained on that property. So I just want to make that as a point of matter.
No, I think that's good to point out.
I think we need to get to the legal, the grandfather portion first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just make sure.
yeah.
I just believe there's gotta be something written in that 76 merge for zoning contingency for when you decide to demerge at some point. You know, does that now become a separate lot? Because when you demerged it, it
You're looking
became
for
a separate
something.
lot.
that-
Huh?
Never
She's looking
heard
for
that
an
word
easy
so
way
many
out.
times in one day.
There's no
Okay,
easy
so
way
what
out.
I would need is a motion for a continuance.
We did it.
You already motioned, 5
Second?
seconds.
By Jamie.
Who?
All in favor? Jackie. Jackie's friend Jamie. Julie's sister.
5-0.
We're here all week.
Is that for both of them?
So, no, and then we're gonna request a continuance till January 3rd for the variance at 9 Rogers Street. And I don't know if I should read that in.
No,
We'll
wait,
just make
wait
sure
for
we read it in
then.
at
Yeah,
the-
wait for
okay.
then, so, we'll have you
Make a
first
motion
on
for
the
that?
agenda for January 3rd.
Continue.
Yeah, I think we should have a motion to continue 9 Rogers Street
Fire alarm? Go figure.
for a variance.
I'd make a motion to continue 9 Rogers Street for the variance on a 195-9 to the next meeting on January
Second
3rd.
continuance.
Second by Mary.
Oh,
All in favor?
probably up with Brian.
Down the J's, that's
Can
how
you,
it's
can you
Brian.
at least, look, you've got 4 different letters to choose from, you know, you can pick one that exists.
What's your middle name?
Oh, yeah, you want to see it? Sure, yeah.
You're welcome. It's a complicated issue, and we want to make it right. I mean, you know,
Are we adjourned?
there's certainly neighbor concerns. There's
Charlie, what did we just do?
What about minutes?
That's what I said, I wanted to.
I understand.
Talk to the chairman.
So we didn't adjourn. We just
Yeah.
continued.
Are we doing minutes?
Did we adjourn?
No. we're supposed to do minutes.
We have the minutes.
But then in the meantime,
Okay.
somebody
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
As written, no correction?
No, there's one
I already
correction.
gave Colleen my
Wait a minute,
corrections.
we have a correction.
I will,
T-O-O.
Yeah, I think she
Picos?
changed them, right?
so you guys can.
I gave her that, I gave her the COO.
I abstain.
Yeah, I found them just before the
So,
meeting.
so,
T-O-O in
we'll be
Picos.
tasked with.
Are you the English
town
major?
council
Look at you.
for another one
Grammar things and
regarding
stuff.
merging.
I do have a
Yes.
request for the minutes, too.
So that'll be sent to us.
I think we should have surnames.
Surnames.
No, don't make me do that.
Oh,
You're all
Ms.
named
and
in the
Mrs.
front.
Really?
You're all named in the front, and then
You
I
could do
need your
Mr. and
last
Miss,
name.
it's just so,
It's easier to type. You don't have to type them up.
I have to read them, it's worse.
You've never been called Reedy? Just
I
Reedy?
never liked it. Remember Mr. Dalrymple used to call me
I can call you
father
something
that.
else.
It bugged the crap.
Okay, oh my.
That was only like 60 years ago. All right, so the minutes have been approved and seconded.
I did a motion to approve them.
Second.
Second by Steve, all in favor?
Thank
Aye.
you.
I'm abstaining.
I'm abstaining too.
So we have three.
Yeah, because there was only 3
abstentions.
people that could vote on those anyway.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second the motion.
Third.
No second on an adjournment, discussion
I
on.
fourth it.
Gonna get all
I
your
agree with
Robert's
it.
Rules of Orders for
Speaking of rules of orders,
For Chris, we have to
Miss
close the meeting.
Pauline.
The meeting's closed.
when will you know?